What is up, YouTube? Hope everybody is doing well on this wonderful, for me it's Saturday night, but for you guys, probably Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, prior to obviously the first official Sunday of the 2020 regular season. So in this video, I just plan on kind of previewing and ultimately giving my prediction on how I think some of these games are going to go. And hopefully, if you guys enjoy this series, I'll keep doing it. We can get a running total of just how incorrect I guess I am going to be on some of these, or how correct in some circumstances. Obviously, not this past Thursday night. I unfortunately thought the Texans were actually going to put up more of a fight than they did. I thought that the new offense, in which everybody's slamming them, DeAndre Hopkins is gone, Watson needs help. I actually thought that the just kind of the four wide set where you have Stills, you have Cobb, you have Fuller, and you have Brandon Cooks, as well as David or Duke Johnson in the backfield. I thought that was too much for a kind of porous Kansas City defense to handle, and I thought that they were going to exploit that. They were going to run most of their offense out of that, and unfortunately, they didn't. I don't think Kenny Stills or Randall Cobb had a target into the second half. It was kind of embarrassing. It was kind of a bad effort, if we're being completely honest. And obviously, I was wrong in that prediction. Should have went with old Patrick Mahomes. But to kick off the Sunday games, Green Bay, Minnesota. I think this one's pretty interesting. Obviously, the NFC North matchup, and it really could go either way. With Minnesota, we're talking about a team that, I've been saying all offseason that they've lost three Pro Bowl, All-Pro type players in, Stephon Diggs, Xavier Rhodes, and Everson Griffin. Well, they just recently lost another one in Danielle Hunter. He is going to be placed on IR, was placed on IR. We really don't know, when he's going to be back, if he's going to be back. So obviously they traded for Yannick Ngakoue. How much of the playbook does he have down? Of course, being a DN, there's not all that much to know, just some stunts here and there. Mostly just, hey, go beat the tackle across me. Well, if he's going up against David Bakhtiari, that's going to be kind of tough. So I do think that I'm going to give this slight edge to Green Bay. It helps for Aaron Rodgers' sake, the whole Jordan Love narrative in my mind. I think he's going to come out with something to prove and really just pick apart this Vikings secondary that is kind of lackluster when you compare it to last season. Obviously, you lose Xavier Rhodes, you lose Mackenzie Alexander, and you lose Trey Waynes. You're returning essentially zero of your top three corners. Obviously, Mike Hughes, who they recently drafted, he's going to take on a much larger role, but I just don't see it working out for them against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Thus, I'm going to take Green Bay. I do think that Delvin Cook, I think he'll have a nice game. I actually think this will be a really close one. With Montrevious Adams, I believe he's doubtful. I don't think he's going to play. This Packers run D is pretty porous. Of course, we saw what Raheem Mostert did to them in the conference championship. Don't want to bring up any bad memories for Packers fans, but I do think that just game script wise, just that inexperience on the Vikings defensive side, I think that's going to favor Green Bay and ultimately give them the victory in my eyes. Next up, do we even need to talk about this game? The Colts at Jaguars. Of course, it is the Philip Rivers debut. That's what we got to be interested to see. We got to be interested to see DeForest Buckner. To me, you got to be interested to see Jonathan Taylor. There's a lot to watch on the Indianapolis side and nothing to watch on the Jacksonville side. That's why I'm taking the Colts, no questions asked. If the Colts lose this one, that means that Philip Rivers, he last year we kind of thought he was falling off a cliff. This means that he nose dive, whatever you want. He's at the bottom of the cliff now, and that's not good. That is not good for Colts fans because obviously you do still have Jacoby Brissett. But if you lose this game, I know it's the first one and people don't want to overreact to week one, but man, that's tough. That's real tough. Next up, Raiders, Panthers. Actually, before we move on to that, I do want to mention, what do you guys think that the snap or carry kind of distribution is going to be between that Colts stable of running backs in terms of, Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor, obviously, and Marlon Mack? I've gotten in a couple debates with my friends about this. I don't think that you're just going to shy away from using Marlon Mack, who's been a multiple-time or really close to a multiple-time 1,000-yard rusher, just because you spend a second-round pick on a running back. We don't expect J.K. Dobbins, I don't think, to all of a sudden lead the Ravens in rushes. We definitely don't expect A.J. Dillon to take the job from Aaron Jones. So why is everybody just kind of writing off Marlon Mack? I actually think that him against this porous Jaguars defense, I think that he's going to have quite the showing as long as he does get right around 15 touches, which I fully expect he will. Next up, though, Raiders at Panthers. Now, this one's an interesting one because if you guys did watch my bold prediction video, I do think that the Panthers, they're going to lead the NFL in sacks, right? I think that defensive line is fantastic, both against the run and the pass, if we're being completely honest. And the Raiders, they're going to try and pound the ball down your throat all day. Well, how is that going to work out? I actually think it'll work out decently well. That Raiders offensive line is still really good. Of course, you have Henry Ruggs, who just the added dynamic of, I don't even know if you need to throw Henry Ruggs the ball that much, but just the fact that you have somebody who can take the top off the defense, who can force safeties to play a couple extra yards back, that's going to alleviate so much of the pressure off of not only Derek Carr, but also Josh Jacobs. And thus, I'm pretty confident that the Raiders are going to take this one. Obviously, they kind of disappointed last year. In other ways, they kind of surprised us, actually. I don't think that many people saw Darren Waller. I don't think a lot of people saw Tyrell Williams being a competent number one. Of course, he's going to be out. That's a significant blow. But Teddy Bridgewater's first game, I'm going to go Raiders just because I do feel like we know that in this game, Josh Jacobs is going to pound the ball down their throat 20 to 25 times. And if that happens with that offensive line, I'm not sure if Teddy Bridgewater is going to be mistake-free enough to where they're just not going to control the clock and run them out of the game, essentially. Next up, we got the Jets and the Bills. And, honestly, the Bills, they're pretty healthy right now. The Jets, on the other hand, Marcus May is questionable. Having already lost Jamal Adams. If he's out, that's just a huge loss. Denzel Mims, he's not suiting up. To me, that's a pretty big loss because ultimately, at the end of the day, just a bad team from last year is already getting worse. I'm going to go Buffalo. I actually expect a pretty big game out of the Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs kind of combination there. I think they're going to want to show why they spent so much on Diggs when, obviously some people are kind of questioning that. Oh, hey, look at what Arizona got DeAndre Hopkins for. You spent this much on Diggs. I actually think that Diggs absolutely balls out as he gives Josh Allen really his first elite weapon that he's ever had, because no offense to Cole Beasley, no offense to John Brown, Stephon Diggs is just on another level. And I think that they're going to establish that connection pretty early on here against the Jets. Next up, this one's tough. You look at the injury report, there's not too much going on. The Seahawks, Dwayne Brown, he's doubtful. That's pretty substantial when you consider the fact that offensive line is already a big question mark. But on the opposite side, the Falcons, Dante Fowler, he's had some injury concerns. I'm a little bit confused at what's happened with Todd Gurley. I don't see a questionable or doubtful tag, but supposedly he didn't practice. I'm going to assume he plays because I haven't seen anything. I think I'm going to ultimately go with the Falcons in this one. I know that's probably an upset to some people considering, hey, the Seahawks, they have three, in my opinion, top 15 players, right? They have Russell Wilson, they have Bobby Wagner, they have Jamal Adams, right? That's wonderful. But to me, at the end of the day, there's some really high highs on the team, but there's some pretty low lows as well. And if Dwayne Brown's out, that offensive line is most certainly one of those. That's a team that loves to establish the run. I do wonder how much Chris Carson is going to be used after the hip injury in not the postseason last year, but what was it, week 15, week 16 last year. Curious how much of a workload he's going to get. Obviously, they have Carlos Hyde now, so that'll be an interesting dynamic to watch. But I do think that Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, that really interesting Falcons offense, I think that they're ultimately going to take this game. And next up, Eagles at Washington. I feel bad for the Eagles already. I really do. Last year the injury bug hit them worse than probably any team in the entire NFL, and it just seems like it's starting again. Jalen Reagor was questionable earlier in the week. You have now Alshon Jeffrey, he's out. Miles Sanders, he's not even making the trip with the team. Of course, all the way back in, July, Brandon Brooks hurt his Achilles. He's out for the year. I just feel so bad for Carson Wentz and this team because the general manager and that staff, Howie Roseman, they've put together a wonderful team on paper. But at some point, what you see on paper has got to translate to the field. And if they can't stay healthy, it's not going to work, right? Well, luckily, week one, it's against the Redskins, so it probably is going to work because I don't think that the Redskins are scaring anybody. Obviously, I do love that Redskins defensive front, but other than that, I really have question marks about that entire team. Who's really going to get the vast majority of touches on offense? That's going to be really interesting to me. Obviously, a lot of people there in love with Terry McLaurin. Personally, I think Darius Slay is going to kind of lock him down, if I'm being completely honest. I think that game is going to be up to Dwayne Haskins' ability to hook up with guys like Steven Sims and Antonio Gandy Golden. I don't know how big of a role he's going to have. Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. It's just going to be an interesting one for Washington. I apologize for calling them the Redskins earlier. The Washington football team. I unfortunately think they're going to be 0-1 under that new name. Next up, we have Dolphins at the Patriots, and I'll be honest, I think that's a pretty interesting one because we saw all the Patriots opt out. So Marcus Cannon, Patrick Chung, Donta Hightower. We saw the guys that they lost in the offseason. Danny Shelton, Kyle Van Noy, Duron Harmon they lost. Just a bunch of guys, a laundry list of guys. Elandon Roberts. And a couple of those guys are in Miami now. Whereas the Dolphins, obviously, they bring in Byron Jones, Xavier Howard. I believe he's back fully healthy now. They had, 3 first-round draft picks. Of course, Tua, he's not going to be playing. I do think that this game will ultimately go to the Patriots, but I think that game's kind of a 50-50 coin flip, if I'm being completely honest. Ryan Fitzpatrick, excuse me, he's an absolute gunslinger, and, you never know just what he's going to do when you put him under center. This man, he'll throw the ball deep 7-8 times a game if he has to. He has no fear. He's kind of in that Jameis Winston mold where he'll just toss it up. And for a guy like Devontae Parker, that's exactly what you want at quarterback in my eyes. But unfortunately, I don't think that is what's going to win you games against still a solid secondary. They're McCourty brothers. We have Stephon Gilmore, and just a good offense. This Dolphins defense is solid. It's very solid, much improved. But the Patriots' offensive line is very good. I do think that as long as N'Keal Harry plays, he's questionable right now. As long as he and Edelman are on the outsides, I think that we're going to see a lot of Sony Michel. I think we're going to see a lot of Cam Newton kind of getting integrated into this offense. And ultimately, I do think the Patriots pull out the win, but I wouldn't be shocked if it goes the other way. Next up, Browns at Ravens. If you guys watched my bold predictions video, you know that I think the Browns are going to be a playoff team, right? Well, question is, do I think they are going to start off as a playoff team week 1 beating the Baltimore Ravens? Man, I've been in here so long, the lights are shutting off. That's wild. Hopefully you guys can still see me. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because the Browns do have some injuries. I mentioned in my last video, Grant Delpit being out for the year. That's really unfortunate. But I do think that Greedy Williams being out for the game, that is a downgrade, but it really doesn't impact them that much because who is Baltimore even rolling out at receiver that scares you that much? To me, what really scares me is, of course, Lamar Jackson. We can't discount that. But it's really Mark Andrews against this really questionable group of linebackers that the Browns have. So I think that, again, this is another game that I'm probably closer on than most people, but I'll say the Browns. I'll have the courage of my convictions to go with the Browns. I don't necessarily love it. I'll be completely honest. If we were like betting on these games, I would probably just abstain from that one. But no, I do think that those tackles are much improved in Cleveland. I talk about them all the time. Getting Jack Conklin, getting Jedrick Wills, I think that's a huge upgrade from Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard. I feel like I just say their names in almost every video at this point where I talk about Cleveland. But it's such a huge upgrade. The only problem is you're going up against an elite Ravens defense anyway. So how much is that really going to matter? I think we're just going to have to wait and see. I'll give Cleveland a slight edge in the upset in really a game that I do think could have some pretty big playoff implications later on in the year, as I do think, as I said in my previous video, I think that's a 3-team race where all 3 teams might be fighting for that number 1 seed. Next up, Bears at Lions. Everybody who's watched me before, they know that I'm a Lions fan, but fan doesn't mean that I am delusional, right? I'm going with the Chicago Bears pretty easily, actually. This Lions defense doesn't scare me. Doesn't scare me one bit. What does really scare me is the fact that Kenny Golladay, he appears to be out. Big V, the huge acquisition at right tackle, he's going to be out. That means Tyrell Crosby's going to probably get the start. You're already going to have to line up him against Khalil Mack or Robert Quinn. He's doubtful right now. But even if he doesn't play, still, the fact that Khalil Mack is going to be on either Taylor Decker or Tyrell Crosby, that's enough to give you nightmares as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator. And to me, it's probably enough to give the Bears the win, if we're being completely honest. That defense is very solid. It's sneaky solid. People want to look at them and compare them to a couple years ago and say, it might be a little bit worse talent-wise. I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but like getting Akeem Hicks back, that's huge. Drafting Jalen Johnson, that's a solid acquisition, especially in a game where who is even going to be the Lions' number 2 receiver? We don't even know. Obviously, you're going to have Marvin Jones. You're going to have Danny Amendola from the slot. I just think the Bears right now match up perfectly for this Lions team. Of course, the Stafford back injury last year. There's just so many question marks about the Lions that I can't go there. Who's even going to touch the ball out of the backfield? I'm hearing reports that Adrian Peterson is going to be the starter. That's hilarious if it happens. That I would very much so enjoy that, just for the fact that those are 2 second-round picks that he's starting over. That's just great. Next up, I guess I should talk about Money Mitch Trubisky. He should be able to pick apart this Lions defense. I'll be completely honest. I'm not scared of this Lions secondary. I'm not scared of the Lions pass rush. I think Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet could pick apart this linebacking core. And I really don't know who guards Allen Robinson. I don't know who guards Anthony Miller. I don't know who guards Tariq Cohen. It's just scary. It's scary because there's a lot of mismatches one way and not a lot the other way. As a result, I'm going to go Bears with apparently the upset. I guess people are saying they think the Lions are going to win. I don't see it. I really don't see it. Next up, Chargers at Bengals. I'll be completely honest. If you've watched any of my videos talking about the Chargers before, I think this defense is a top 3, top 5 defense in the league, right? They're absolutely fantastic. But the question is what do I think about Tyrod Taylor? Apologies that I keep looking up. There's a cleaning staff like outside the room. I can't tell if they're trying to get in or not. But Tyrod Taylor, I kind of think that they're going to lose this game just because I don't think Tyrod Taylor is a competent starting NFL quarterback. And I guess his name's Tyrod Taylor. You got to say it right just to be respectful. But I think that the Bengals might pull this out in Joe Burrow's opening game. Of course, you have just a really nice assortment of weapons in Cincinnati. Who knows who he's going to be thrown to? Of course, a healthy AJ Green is a good sight to see. Tyler Boyd, John Ross, T. Higgins, CJ Uzoma is going to be their starting tight end. That's a little bit interesting. Jonah Williams coming back, their first-round pick from last year, who he didn't play at all last year. I think that's slightly interesting. Geno Atkins is out, which is a pretty big loss on the other side. But Bengals at home, that's bold. It's really bold. It's just how bad do I think Tyrod is, I'll be honest. And that's what I'm weighing in my head because the offense is still really solid around him. We can't forget that. Keenan Allen, there are some questions about Mike Williams' status right now that haven't really came down yet. Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, an improved offensive line. Trey Turner, Brian Bulaga. I believe they're both playing. That's a tough one. I'm gonna go the Chargers just because of how good that defense is at the end of the day. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals win it. A lot of times people look at these games, they're like, oh, this team has no chance. Well, it's the NFL, right? Every team has a chance, or else they wouldn't play the games. And, to me, I think that I view a lot of these games closer than most people, and that specifically is one of them just because there's one position that that the Chargers do not have locked down. Next up, Cardinals at 49ers. I was talking to one of my friends earlier today, and he thinks the Cardinals are going to upset because the 49ers offense is looking pretty anemic right now. And honestly, with no Debo, with Brandon Ayuk potentially out, I believe was he doubtful? He was at least questionable. I know that. It's interesting. It's most certainly interesting. Of course, Jalen Hurd, he's out. I'm not sure how much that matters. But to me, just this Cardinals team in general, they have some very good high-end talent, but they have some holes. And if you want to look at this Cardinals defensive line, it's bad. Who is it? Peters. It's Zach Allen. I can't even think of who else is on it, but it's bad, right? And we've seen the 49ers, what do they do to bad offensive lines? Hey, go ask Raheem Mostert what he did in the NFC Conference Championship. I didn't think I was going to mention that game twice in one video, but I have. I think that even though I'm definitely lower on the 49ers than most, I'm lower on the Cardinals than most as well. So I am going to go with San Francisco here in a pretty easy win, I think. Even though DeAndre Hopkins, it's the debut game, it'll be interesting. I'm not going to say that they're going to upset the NFC champions from last year. I don't think. No. Next up, if you guys did watch my recent video, you know that I think the Saints, they're to me my favorites to win the Super Bowl, right? On both sides of the ball, just so talented. Whereas the Buccaneers, I don't really think that they make the playoffs, which is certainly a hot take to many people's standards. I think there's some question marks on the O-line. I think there's some question marks on the defense. Some pretty substantial question marks on the defense, if we're being completely honest. Whereas the Saints, they have none of those. The Saints, they essentially just took that base team that they had last year and just continued to stack up on it. Whether it's Emmanuel Sanders, whether it's Janoris Jenkins. I mean, there's just so many additions that this team has that I'll take Saints pretty easily. Next up, Cowboys Rams. Cowboys. There's really no discussion here. To me, this Rams offense is going to be intriguing. I'd love to see how they split carries just in the year in general between Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. But I'll take Dallas. I just think that offense is too good. It might be the best offense on paper in the entire league. Between that offensive line, Amari, Gallup, CeeDee, Zeke, Blake Jarwin, Dak, obviously. I just got to go Cowboys. I'm not sure that the Rams can handle that. And especially Jared Goff now. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on him now that Todd Gurley's gone. I know Gurley didn't have the best year last year because, really it was kind of unclear. Was it the knee? Was it kind of a rift between him and Sean McVay? Don't know 100%, but I'm going to take my chances on the Dallas Cowboys. Next up, Steelers-Giants. The Giants are interesting, but ultimately I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm going to bet that Big Ben is still a competent NFL quarterback, which is really, to me, all you need with this team to win. That's what we saw last year. We saw him with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. We saw them be a wild card team. And now you're going to have Big Ben Roethlisberger. And, if he's 75% of what he was 2-3 years ago, I'll take the Steelers pretty easily. I like the addition of Chase Claypool. I don't believe he's playing tomorrow. Let me fact check that real quick for you guys. I guess I was wrong. I don't know why I thought Claypool was out. He just on the depth chart I was looking at, they had him as the fourth string receiver behind James Washington and Deontay Johnson. So that's probably why I just didn't see him immediately. When I think of him as a wide receiver too, which obviously that's a little bit too soon to think of. But I'm still probably going to go Steelers there. It is interesting. David DeCastro's out. I didn't know that. That might cause Dexter Lawrence to have a pretty good game. I really wouldn't be shocked if he's able to stuff the run up the middle a little bit better than usual, which is already saying something. I also found it interesting. Logan Ryan on the first depth chart apparently just came out like 27 minutes ago. It's past midnight. I don't know what's going on. But they have Logan Ryan as the backup free safety for this game. I'll be curious if that lasts into the second quarter, because if you're getting torched on the edges by Juju, James Washington, et cetera, I don't think that you're going to let Logan Ryan stand on the sidelines. Not a chance. I'm going to go Steelers, even though I do think the Giants are a little bit interesting in this game. I don't think they're interesting enough. And next up, in terms of the later Monday Night Football game, I think the Titans-Broncos is quite interesting. A lot of people, they're pretty high on this Broncos offense for good reason, right? Obviously, you bring in Melvin Gordon, you bring in Jerry Jeudy, Drew Lock in his second year after finishing out the year strong, as well as adding some really nice pieces on that defense. It's not every day that you just get to bring in A.J. Boye and Jarrell Casey for relatively cheap, but this Broncos front office was able to do just that. Of course, though, the Von Miller injury, that's a pretty substantial blow, right? Before that, I would have had them in my bold prediction video as a top 5 offense in the league this season. I actually don't think that's very bold at all, but it was going to be in the video. Whereas the Titans, they didn't. It's not like they lost their elite pass rusher. They actually just got an elite pass rusher in Jadeveon Clowney. I'll be very interested to see what his role is. You got to assume between him and Harold Landry, they're gonna wreak some havoc on this Broncos offensive line. And honestly, even though I think that the Broncos are going to give this game a run, I do think this will be a pretty close contest. I just don't trust Drew Lock enough which is saying something because if you guys have watched my videos, I don't really trust Ryan Tannehill either. I think I'm going to take Titans in this one. Not super easy, but I guess it is a Jarrell Casey revenge game. Maybe he's going to go nuts or something. But no, I do think in all seriousness that the Titans will pull this one out in a pretty close one in Denver. So with that being said, those are my predictions. If you guys next week, just let me know in the comments some feedback. Would you rather me do these against the spread? I know it's probably a little bit more difficult. You'll see some more variability in my picks because for a certain run of these, I was I was just mostly going favorites. Obviously, that's what you're mostly going to do. That's why they're the favorites. But if you guys think going with or against the spread would be more interesting in the future, let me know. If you guys just don't even want to see this, if you think that me just talking about injuries and talking about matchups and stuff, if you think that's pretty boring, then yeah, let me know as well, because I enjoy doing this. I love just thinking about and theorizing how these games are going to go, because ultimately we're going to get to see. We're going to see, was I right? Was I wrong? Were you right? Were you wrong? Et cetera, et cetera. I think that that's a lot of fun. And this is no exception, obviously. In terms of what do I want you guys to do? Well, I want you guys to do two things, actually. First off, leave your picks in the comments. If you've made it this far in the video, tell me who you're picking in the comments, just like I have. And we can keep a running total of you. And, if you want to shout out at the end of the regular season because you did better than me, I'll give you a shout out. Don't worry. Unfortunately, it's only going to be the 72 subs or whatever I have now, but a shout out's a shout out, right? So if you want to compete against me, if you want to see how you stack up, go right ahead, toss them down in the comments below. We'll keep track of that as we go. And other than that, I did mention this in my recent channel update video, but one series that I've been thinking about launching here would be called like mic'd up game balls, right? Where I'd give out a game ball to who I thought performed the best in whatever games it is that I end up watching from that previous week. Well, what I'm thinking about doing is putting each game as an individual comment down below in the comment section. And then if you guys want me to try and get to a specific game, just thumb it up. And then, what would happen then is obviously there's going to be the games that I watch and, some that I do or don't want to give game balls out to, depending on, just the nature of the game. Like, let's say this past Thursday night, right? Obviously, I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that's a certainly a game ball worthy performance that he had, right? He had a wonderful debut, and there's a lot of stuff there that I could break down in terms of why he was so effective. And I do it kind of in a similar style to my top 100 videos, but like I said, I think a good idea would be I'll make an individual comment for each one of these games, and if you want me to give a game ball to somebody out in the game of your favorite team or maybe one of the primetime games, just thumb that up, and I'll try and get to as many as possible. Like I said, no promises. It might just be one. It might be 5. It might be 10. Who knows? It's all going to depend on, kind of my workload this week in terms of homework and all that stuff. So that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let's enjoy a good first weekend of football here. And I'm mic'd up. Now I'm mic'ing out. Peace, guys.